we also talked earlier on about the support that artists could get as they put their applications forward through, and each organisation has different levels of support. I was very impressed myself by the fact that so many of your organisations were willing to speak at an early stage of the application to artists, which is a very important thing. I think people should remember as they're applying. And there actually are quite a few people from a lot of different organisations. I wonder if we should just open the floor to questions now and find out if anybody there has got any questions they want to put to the panel. I'll have to run up with this incredibly heavy microphone, but it would get my step counter up, which would be really, really useful. Well, that would be rather marvellous, actually. Is there any questions you'd like to put to the panel? This is such an exciting moment, the tension in the room.
Well, it's the same question which we pre-discussed asking, which was kind of about mid-career opportunities. So Andrew here has an amazing exhibition which is going to be taking over this space. But then what do you do when you have that first big success? What are the next steps? Is it an agent? Is that what you need? Like, how do you, when you have an exhibition that is ready to go and not to be sold, but just to be shown to do science communication in other places, how do you do that? Oh, right, okay. Yeah, everyone else is mic'd up, all like own mics. I think it's just so that...
Oh no, now we've got 3 microphones.
Okay, I'd like to answer this question in my own experience and then share it with the rest of the panel. So part of my kind of business model for myself is that having come up with an exhibit, even respond to the kind of open call, which is specific, and they say, we'll give you this much money for this, to produce this on this date. Or if I do something speculative and organize an event myself and the venue and even staffing, is I then look to tour it. I look to sell it and promote it to absolute death. So what I tend to do is I'll literally have a year where I make things, and then I'll have another year where I don't make things, and I kind of leapfrog between the two. Because the amount of investment in making art projects happen, both physically, mentally, emotionally, just absolutely every way, is absolutely exhausting and really difficult to make things in those time. So once I've invested all that time and energy, then I want to make the most of it. And also when I first conceived the idea, because there is, especially speculative work, there is always the danger that it won't be accepted, or even if it is accepted, something will happen, like COVID will come along, or a venue won't have as much space as people thought they had. So in order to ensure that I'm going to appease the funders and the people involved, and that I'm still going to look like a good horse to bet on in future, I make sure that I'm taking that event, that exhibit, to several different events. So for example, Betty the Basking Shark, which I produced for Edinburgh Science Festival one year, she is also been at Glasgow Science Festival, if I'm honest. She is possibly going to be at Stirling Science Festival. She's been exhibited in response to COP. She's going about all over the place and having herself a nice little tour. Putting her together, producing her and getting everything together in time, it was hard. And I'm definitely going to milk that for all it's worth. And same with my other exhibits. I've done a lot of laser sculptures. Again, the idea with them was to generate attention and publicity, and as much as possible be able to sell it. And I find that's how I get a lot of my opportunities, is by basically creating my own buzz. And you get a certain level of credibility if your work's included in media and promotional activities. And again, that is a definite advantage to being an artist in the science community. Science events promote things really well. They get stuff in papers, and your work is a lot more likely to be heard of and seen, and they're just far better attended in art galleries.
Great answer. That was really interesting. That was a clash of language there with the use of the word agent, and I could feel sort of the science community was going, what? Isn't that somebody that spies on the Soviet Union? No. So you've got this interesting point where you've got artists who are creating work who are, let's call them mid-career. Does that matter to the Science Festival when people are making applications? Does it have to be somebody who's known, or will you take somebody at the very beginning of their career?
Thanks. I think it really depends on what we're looking to do with the piece of art, like where we're looking to use it, what's the kind of effect we're going to have, you know, what kind of audience response we want from it. Sometimes we're really keen to, you know, sponsor a new piece of work, a new kind of exploration of a theme that no one's thought about in that way before, and then we might well be looking for something new, something up and coming that nobody's seen before. Sometimes we're looking for something larger, more interactive, more robust, that can stand up to, you know, 1,000 or 5,000 people, you know, coming through it each day. And in that case, we will usually look for a more established company, a more established creation. But I think you're absolutely right, Jonathan, about like using the same piece over and over again. I mean, a lot of the stuff we do out in Abu Dhabi, we use sort of, you know, mid-sized sort of mid-career artists, reasonably successful, but it's the same stuff. You can go onto their website, you can see the portfolio, you know, these are the different things you can get, and you can phone up and say, I want that one looks really cool. And he's like, right, well, you know, it's on display in Berlin, you know, that month, but you can have it after that. And that's, you know, we just know then that that's a real piece, it's solid, it's robust, and it will last. But yeah, absolutely. Keep reusing your pieces. You're like, you know, why not? Like, send it around the world. If you've spent all that time and effort and emotional energy to create something, then use it again, sell it as much as you can. Make collateral for it. Make like a really neat little, you know, 200-word description of it. Make sure we've got some pictures of it that makes it easy for us to sell to our clients or to funders and things. You know, yeah, sweat your assets. You know, make them work. You've worked really hard to create it, so keep using it.
Sweat your assets. Sweat your assets. If that's a takeaway you take from today, it's sweat your assets. There's like Michael. I think Michael wants. Hi, Michael.
Yeah, I was. I think I totally agree with what Bill said. I think that, and what Jonathan said about reuse and getting your money's worth, as long as the audience is different every time. The only exception I would say is if you were producing a piece in collaboration with a community and you were co-designing it with them, and then it becomes inherently place-based and about them, and wouldn't necessarily translate to another audience. But that is more time-consuming and more resource-intensive way of working. It's great practice in public engagement and community engagement, and from our side, it's not something that we would probably fund others to do or haven't yet. It's more work that we would do ourselves. When funding others through the grant scheme, absolutely something that can be replicated is the way forward. And to go back to the original question, absolutely, if you're a newbie, that's absolutely fine. Everyone has to start somewhere. And if you can convince us that it's a well-conceived project, but you haven't got a massive amount of experience, then that's not a problem at all. As long as, you know, you can reassure us, and we would probably just ask for a conversation face-to-face in that situation. And then, you know, it's good to give people a leg up, especially as a lot of young people are coming up and doing this sort of thing, and not everybody sticks in the game forever either. So if you only ever stick with, you know, the known people that you've aware of before, they're going to start going on to other things eventually. So you need the you know, the fresh blood coming through as well.
This conversation's getting quite gory. What was
I made it sound menacing, didn't I? Sorry.
Yeah, fresh blood, spending your assets. I don't know what's. I mean, that's a bit. So, if taking even an earlier point in someone's career, I'm going to come to you now, Nicola. If somebody applies to you or somebody sees somebody they want to come to you, should they feel free to just come and talk to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like anybody else who's giving funding and support, we really, really want to have good applications to look at, because we have, you know, expert panels looking at the applications. They don't want to spend their time reading something that isn't fitting the brief, that isn't going to be appropriate. We would much rather have an early conversation with someone and either gently tell them that we're the wrong place and point them at someone who is the right place, because we try and make it always be a positive, useful conversation, or to give them a bit of a steer about what they need to do to bring it up to scratch. And a lot of that has to do with read the criteria that the people are looking for, because it maps the criteria. That is half the battle done. You know, as long that is a standard thing, that we're not going to be funding stuff that is not meeting our criteria. So make sure it meets the criteria. We'll help them do that. We'll have conversations about partners they might want to work with, which might include introducing them to people. And then when they apply, we'll give them feedback as well, whether they're successful or not. That will also point them to, this might be a more appropriate funding source. This might be some other people you can work with. If they're successful, it might be like, and we've set up a meeting with some of these people. But yeah, we'd always rather have a conversation early. And then I know there are projects that we haven't funded that have had a successful outcome somewhere else. And that is like ultimate happiness for us. Like, we've managed to be helpful whether or not we've given them money. And I think that for us is also about measuring what we've done. So Jonathan was asking before about how we measure whether networking is successful or not. And we actually do quite a lot of evaluation surveys, we do quite a lot of data capture. So we're kind of doing a big project to find out what has been working, what kind of interventions make the difference, and how much things like that kind of feedback on the process and one-to-one meetings ahead of applications going in kind of makes a difference to people. We've got anecdotal feedback that makes a huge difference. So, but I know that most funders and most people who are supporting work would rather have an early conversation. It's very rare, and it tends to be the very big ones that are very oversubscribed, where it's just a capacity issue. It's never a lack of wanting to have that conversation.
It's always good to come and chat.
Yes.
Absolutely. Jonathan, on the subject of applications, because you're one of the ones who does the applications, how long should you spend on an application?
If I can ask my friend and flatmate Sean Bevan to leave the room while I answer this. Yes, I exploit my friendship considerably on that one. I spent far too long over applications, and well, I say I spent far too long over them, but then if I don't get the funding or if I don't get the opportunity, then that's a waste. Whereas if I spend 2 weeks on an application and then I get it, well, that's not a waste. So yeah, for me, I do find it really difficult. And with funding applications previously, if I'm totally honest, looking at my own career, for the first several years of being an artist, I didn't bother with funding applications. I went, the amount of time and effort involved in these funding applications, I can work overtime at the day job and get myself the money and not even worry about the funding application. It's there, it's in my pocket, boom, done. I am now taking a different approach because in order to become more successful, more established, you do need the credibility of getting the funding, which means that I am doing funding applications. But yeah, for me, it depends. IOP is a wonderfully speedy process, I've found, and I've applied to them and literally spent a day on an application form and had the money a few days later. Other organizations, Creative Informatics, the Connected Innovators application, it meant that much to me. I spent at least about a week and a half just filling the application form, and that's not allowing for all the work that went behind it in order to be able to answer those questions and boxes. So you could easily be talking about a month's worth of work to complete that application form. And like I say, it's also risk-taking, because these are people I'm speaking to and saying I'm looking to do this. If it doesn't happen, they're going to be asking questions.
Do you give feedback if people apply to you and they...
Yes. Yeah. But I think I can't remember who's saying it, about shaping the brief, like trying to be really clear what you're looking for. I think in the past we've sort of fallen foul of having quite open applications, and it just means you get lots and lots of applications, which means lots and lots of people's time, which in the end isn't going to go towards there's a limited number of spaces for a project. So I think we have gotten better over the years at trying to be very clear what we're looking for, and therefore actually having a lower number of applications in a way is a good thing, because you're helping people to funnel themselves through, so they're not not aiming at the sort of an opportunity that isn't quite the right fit for them.
Yeah, good advice. Always read the criteria. Has anyone got any questions? You want to stick? Oh, there we go. I've got a special mic runner at the back now.